Welcome to the L.U.M podcast, everybody. My name is Luke.
I'm Mike.
Welcome and listen up, motherfuckers. We're going to be talking a little bit about some stuff going on and some other things. As per usual, we've got our boy Rich in the Dirty Dancing position, not the Footloose position.
I'm in the corner.
He's baby in the corner. All right, now, a couple of things have happened. One of them happened last night. This is the day after the correspondence dinner. Trump has been a pussy and a chicken and has not gone to the correspondence dinner for his entire last term because they hurt his feelings.
My feces got hurt.
Yeah, Seth Meyers and President Obama lit him the fuck up.
Yeah.
The year before
that's what started this whole run.
Yeah. And I mean, fair play, proper vengeance. I'm going to take your job. I'm going to be president.
Yeah.
Cheating aside. But correspondence dinner, they were all eating at the DC Hilton when shots rang out in the lobby. My understanding is the president was rushed out after JD Vance and before his wife. I believe they were still underneath the tables. It seemed incredibly ham-fisted to me, very chaotic, but at the same time, they didn't whisk him away to the White House.
No.
They didn't clear the room. They didn't lock anything really down. They just kept the reporters and the correspondence staff in the ballroom for like an hour. There's actually video of people eating their mashed potatoes while there are snipers and SWAT goons all over the place.
I'll say the thing I found funniest in the footage from the people who are videotaping from the area, the dining area, was when the shots were fired. Some of the Secret Service guys run into the room. One of them stands in front of Trump. It takes no time for JD, Kash Patel, Pete Hicks have to dip out. Trump gets up, trips, but the thing then, like almost on a stage play, three guys in tactical gear come out from behind the curtain and just stand there with their guns ready and looking into the crowd. Only one of them was trying to actually search. The other two were just staring out into the distance.
And I don't want to ascribe motive or protocol to the Secret Service or to SWAT or whatever, but this seemed fishy. It stank. It really, really stank. And also KK Caroline mentioned before the event happened that it would be entertaining, it would be funny, and there would be shots fired in the room. I think that is a very, very it's a poor choice of words, and it's aging very, very badly. So there's definitely that. I believe there's more information now known about the shooter, a dude from California who appears to potentially have gone to a King's protest, having gone to and supported Vice President Harris, I believe. And if that's the case, if he is a lefty, my response is this: fuck you. Don't fucking commit violence. Don't. You're only giving them moral high ground. You're giving them more ammunition to call us violent. Now, if violence happens, protect yourself, but don't come from California to DC looking for that kind of smoke. It's fucked up, and you'll create a martyr. He is going to die via cheeseburgers and his dementia and his kidneys and his et cetera, et cetera. He's going to die from that soon enough. Don't give them the martyr that they want. He's already Jesus to them, remember. And so that's my thought is don't turn him into something that he's not.
I'd rather him die the quarter pounder president than a martyr at this point, because we're looking at a situation where we're not conspiratorial. We try our best not to be. And this administration has no problem playing in the realm of, extraordinary in regards to their responses to things or any of their crazy, almost jokishly malicious things they do is being like part and parcel for how they are. They just behave that way and they act like it's a joke to get away with that behavior. So it's very easy for us to think that this is a situation where the fishiness just reeks to high heaven. You have people who are looking back at a situation because these people allow these things to fester, mind you. Look back to the Butler shooting with him getting shot in the ear and then make wild claims from that.
Which is also incredibly fishy.
Super fishy. He's claiming his ear grew back, which I don't know how people know cartilage works. That's not how that generally works.
Yeah, I've always been curious about that. How do you shoot someone in the ear to the point where someone behind you is killed? However, the ear grows back. I'm not a gun guy. I've shot a Kalashnikov, I've shot an AR-15, and I've shot a shotgun and a rifle, and that's it.
And
so if somebody can enlighten me on the magic ear ammunition, I'm all ears.
Well, that and
Forgive the pun.
anybody who deals in combat sports or amateur wrestling,
there'd be a lot of scar tissue.
They'll tell you that a cauliflower ear can lead to ear loss. So I don't know how rubbing against a mat is more dangerous than getting shot, but apparently he has that Area 51 medical team re-gluing his earpieces back on. But outside of that, the whole situation is very fishy. The Trump administration is not going to do very much to even try to curb that at all. And they're not going to make a statement. The fact they went back to the room and still held their event in a highly unprotected space is even worse.
That's why I don't believe it. I mean, maybe I watch too much TV, too many movies. I'm a big West Wing fan, but somebody shoots at the president, evening is fucking over. And then he turned the whole thing into a spiel for the ballroom. Was this about the ballroom? Honestly,
everything's about the ballroom.
Shitty ballroom that as soon as a Democrat gets in, they better turn it into something else. A mutual aid hub, give it all to the first lady because they destroyed her part of the White House. That was her working area, or do something useful with it. But are you that desperate to keep him dementedly content?
He needs to still be alive long enough for us to watch somebody turn it into the Barack and Michelle Obama White House Memorial Planned Parenthood. Just, like, all right, cool, everything you did is gone.
Yes.
All the gold gets stripped and gets sent to poor people. You know,
it'll be beautiful just watching all his name get taken down from everything.
Kennedy Center.
They're gonna erase his shit. Now, we're digressing. The guy who was involved in this one was a teacher from California.
He was a tutor. He was a private tutor from California. It was the most recent job that he had held, according to what CBS has been able to report.
Gotcha. And that fits in grimly and unfortunately, but fortuitously, that we are going to be discussing education, particularly education funding, and basically the ways that public school kids, particularly Black, brown, and poor kids, are getting screwed and thieverized by voucher schools, charter schools, tax policy, rich assholes that live in the suburbs who want to change the things in a way that affect their taxes more favorably.
Silicon Valley tycoons who decide one day that they can solve all of our problems with a couple $1 billion.
Yes.
Even more evidence that billionaires shouldn't exist.
Right. Now, education is probably one of the more complicated problems to solve in Virons because you can't apply an MBA business model philosophy to it. It's not I make X and then this is how much I get paid because I'm creating X. You're dealing with students, which is a lot more akin to gardening and farming. You can't fail to weed, water, and fertilize one part of your farm and expect it to not grow. Trying to foster education in youth, and there are a lot of things that students need in order to succeed that way.
And also a reminder for anybody who has gardened, you have to remember that in the same vein, there's parts of your garden that are already properly aerated, have the proper soil amounts and compositions, and they'll have the proper pay. So that part of your farm will perform well and do what it needs to do in the context of this farm analogy. But the thing when it comes to, and what we're going to be digging into right now, is the parts of your farm that need the extra resources to be as good and as viable as the other ones.
Yes. If you overfeed the rich and producing parts of your garden, they're not going to produce more. You're just going to have worse in your in the parts of your garden that are in need.
Your overall yield's going to be lower.
Can we say wealthy? Because I mean, now I'm starting to feel fat because you're feeding the rich, and I'm rich.
Rich, you're the best. You're the best rich to feed, though. I want to feed the rich. We'll say wealthy. How about that?
Feed the rich enough, he can't leave the producer's spot, so he's kind of stuck there. I'll send.
Oh my God!
I get so much done.
You want to keep him in a stone basement?
So much done.
Our last
this
video
background looks enough like a sex dungeon that we don't.
Our last video had us talking about Luke being stuck in the dungeon. He was chained to the desk. You know, might as well keep the theme going. No, I mean,
oh man, hey man, you're the white man who owns this property. Whatever people think of is up to you.
This is my serfdom.
No. So I come from. I spent over a decade in Milwaukee Public Schools, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about the way that MPS is set up and how the funds travel with a student. Imagine each student is worth $10,000, $15,000. All right. At the beginning of the school year, schools will recruit. Charter schools and voucher schools will recruit better. They'll have all the fancy bling. They'll have Chromebooks and all the tech that they're going to give you. They don't have principals. They've got headmasters. Ooh, fancy, fancy. What happens is they will promise students the earth, the moon, and the sun. And when the third Friday, they call it third Friday of September hits, those funds lock in wherever that student is. If that student is at Fernwood Montessori, the funds go to Fernwood Montessori. If the students are taken into a charter school or by a charter school and they go there, or a voucher school, then the funds lock in at the voucher school. Now, this is the thing. After that happens, voucher schools and charter schools can complain and claim undue hardship for students who have behavioral issues, students who have disabilities. They will basically fire those students, keep the money because it stays there, and then those students go to MPS, go to Milwaukee Public Schools or your local schools, where they are without that funding, and MPS can't turn anybody away. So they end up getting taught for free, and MPS isn't being reimbursed for those funds. It's incredibly messed up, which is why, if you're ever curious why your Milwaukee Public Schools are doing the heaviest kind of recruitment that they can to get students to show up on the third Friday, pizza party, movie, prize, whatever. That's why. It's because those funds lock in and your public school needs those funds so badly. Now, I think that's a terrible way of going about it. I think those funds should go with the students. And it's been my experience that charter schools tend to be religious. They tend to be they hire lesser credentialed people and staff than public schools. When I was in the classroom, and I was probably in the classroom more than a lot because I was an interpreter, which means I was in history, then math, then science, then Spanish, then gym, etc. And so we para level or interpreter level folks saw a lot. And you can see how these kids are showing up hungry. They're showing up not ready to learn. And some of that, parents, you got to step up your game and make sure that kids are ready to show up and follow the teacher's directions, because that robs a lot of the time as well. But I'm not picking on y'all. I'm picking on the thieves who are taking your fucking money. And those thieves are like Ron Johnson, who had Christian charter schools and then referred to MPS students as stupid. Shame on you. You're stealing these kids money and they need it. They are the most in need. And you're taking their money through these fly-by-night potential voucher school system.
There's a part of that. There's a part of that too that people miss, is that when these charter schools start up, they generally are met with an initial group of students who are from people that are sent there via like recommendations. And so those kids are already pre-primed to go into this location with the higher level of accessibility, meaning that they're going in there with a better ability to learn and already a higher level of resources allocated to them, because as evidenced through multiple studies, the more children there are in a classroom per teacher, the lower the performance numbers are. When these kids are going to these charter schools, it's a lower number of children to a larger amount of faculty. They're already gaining a larger benefit just from that exposure. And it's unfairly giving them this superficial leg up on performance metrics in regards to the public schools, who are already underwater in regards to faculty to student ratios.
And when you can fire students after third Friday, then it's easier to winnow down your classroom ratio as well. Meanwhile, while I was in MPS, we had classrooms of 35 and 40. In fact, I spoke to friends who are in the public schools in several different districts and in different positions, and they mentioned these things that could potentially help. Reduce class sizes. Oh, and the other thing, not one of them mentioned raise my pay or improve my benefits. They all said lower classroom sizes and get rid of the micromanaging from central office. There are layers and layers and layers. It's like fucking Philodo. It is a spanakopita of administrative bureaucracy. And a lot of those folks don't need to exist. Neither does their mobile air conditioning armory in the summertime when other students are going to summer school in unair conditioned buildings.
This is all large scale funding lacking. I mean, The big thing that I want to also add on to this too, when regards to like the recruitment process, is I can remember Oak Creek High School in Milwaukee County got into a lot of trouble in the early 2000s. And this is a practice that still goes on, but just not as called out as it used to be. They would, because they're a wealthier school in a better district, and they have a lower than normal student body comparative to other regional areas, they were able to start recruiting exceptional athletes from other areas and then paying the parents to move into their districts so that their kid could attend their school and up their athletics programs. Oak Creek High School for a very long time was known for being a powerhouse in high school football. When Kenosha started having its resurgence of cash flow going back into the city, once Amazon put a warehouse down there, their Bradford high school football team became one of the top high school football programs in the state of Wisconsin because the amount of money these schools were able to put towards the resources for their athletics programs.
Pause for context. Kenosha is a town that's 50 minutes south of Milwaukee. Oak Creek is a southern, rather well-moneyed southern suburb of Milwaukee. And Bradford is the high school in Kenosha. Yeah. Yes. Another thing that's also an issue, and the thing that really bugs me about it is that your teachers are lesser credentialed. You're taking money and you're putting yourself on as one thing, but it's really not. And I don't like it when it's infected with Christianity. One of the things that made our school, Rufus King, special was the diversity of ethnicity, ethnicity, culture, thoughts, location, geography, and spiritual awareness or inclination. And I think that when you start giving Christian schools or Christian home schools a leg up and extra funding, that's fucked all the way up. And it violates the separation of church and state, and further muddies everything else up, because you're not going to get particularly strong science, or you're not going to get true and legit information. Mm-hmm. And Rich, you stay home with your kiddos right now. And so I'm interested in your perspective, particularly as someone, since I stepped in the homeschooling cow pie. Let's open it up properly. What do you think?
Yeah. So, I mean, my wife and I have actually looked into like charter type schools in the past, and actually even more recently, because our daughter has gotten really good with like dance and performance. So we really want to help her, embody that and work on that as much as she wants to. And even for those people that don't know about charter schools enough and like have the context, the one that I'm referencing, and I won't drop names, but it's $20,000 per year for these children to go to school. And the school that she was at previously, before we had her change to a different school in the district, was actually having such hard times with behavioral problems that they had to install weapons detectors and stuff, and funding ends up going towards things that are not education based but protection based. And that's something else that needs to be kind of brought into that kind of perspective. And then from the stay-at-home parent side, you kind of get into daycare and lower education for children, because you have to kind of take into consideration how much money do you have to make in order to both put your child into child care and still bring home money. Because if you don't break that number, then you're working for free. You're not actually doing anything to bring your position forward. All you're doing is making somebody else money, and at the end of the day, not spending enough time with your child when you can be a direct influence and force in their life and still make the same amount of money technically.
You're the primary educator as well.
Well, let's not forget really quickly, this is a topic that Trump talked about recently in regards to just trying to give people proper child care. He said that that's something the state can't, or the federal government can't provide because it's not their business to provide. He said he claims it's the state. He's got no problem sending bombs into foreign countries when that money could have been used to provide those services at an equal level.
Yes,
and it's very
Stop
interesting.
Wasting my money on bombs.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because, like we've talked about in previous episodes, right, is that the detention of ICE detainees and such, right? you're paying money towards that, but you can't pay to have a child taken care of.
And they're traumatizing your school.
Right. So at the same time, you're doing the complete opposite for no reason. And it's interesting to see how all of these topics then tie into each other, you know.
They also mentioned yesterday when the shots rang out during the correspondence dinner, some of the activity online was saying, now these motherfuckers know what school kids feel like when they're doing code red drills, when there are people who are trying to breach the school and everybody has to get into a corner. And teachers are literally, I was one of the only staff members who had scissors in my backpack when I went from classroom to classroom. Not allowed to have them. I brought them. And anytime I was in a classroom, I was standing closest to the door because I wanted to be the first person to try and protect. Now, is what it is. But also you had students and teachers who were planning exit routes onto the roof. We're gonna go out onto this roof. We're gonna try and hide there. If we have to jump down here, the bushes we're gonna crash into, you'll hopefully only break one ankle. And also the school I worked at, 5 stories high.
If you want to talk about trauma in regards to just the simplest of actions regarding an emergency event, I have a 5-year-old daughter who goes to 4K. We had a bunch of storms in the area, and she told me ad nauseum about all the things that she got taught in regards to having to deal with her tomato drills because she was too young to understand it was actually tornado. It was her tomato drills. Dada, we have to get on the ground and put our head to the ground and be in a safe place. And you don't think that these trainings these kids are getting in regards to these school shootings aren't going to be doubly traumatic. And I'm talking about a naturally occurring event. We could stop having ours become naturally occurring events. We just put in more red flag laws and better regulations on assault weapons. But
Or you could just enforce the Second Amendment. First words, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. Well-regulated, period, end of story. Right now, we don't have regulations on guns. And the most dangerous place for a kid right now, the greatest cause of death is school shootings. Bigger than car accidents, bigger than cancer. So miss me with any other bullshit about caring about your kids. You're not even keeping them alive in your schools. So get fucked sideways with respect. Now, we talked about where the money is going to these charter schools, sometimes to homeschooling, which, teachers, they go to college and get masters even 4 to 6, 7 years. And you think that you're able to do their job better than them just because you're the parent. Now, granted, you are the primary educator, but I'm going to have to see it before I believe it. I really, really am, because some of the people that I worked with were fucking monster teachers. People that I said, I wish I had a kid right now so they could be taught by some of these other people who are just amazing, amazing teachers. And I don't know if you can do a better job than some of the teachers that I've worked with and some of the people that I've seen. These people are busting their ass. They're staying up. They're working 12, 13, 14-hour days. And I defy you to be better read and better educated in their subject matter. And I defy you to be better instructions. Are there shitty teachers out there? Absolutely. And the shitty ones are probably shittier than you think. And yes, there should be mechanisms to get rid of them. However, you have to protect teachers. You have to give them the things that they need, get out of their way. They go to so much school, turn them loose, let them do it. They're creative people. They're experts in this shit. In places like Finland and in Norway and in Scandinavia, other Scandinavian countries, the teacher does nothing but teach. The teacher doesn't make a fucking photocopy. They've got staff to do that. If you need to go to the bathroom or whatever, if you're having a behavior issue, they have assistants to do that. And it is hard to become a teacher. Hard. They make it very hard. And then once you become a teacher, they trust you a lot. And if you're in need of remediation, they come by your side and they support you instead of calling you lazy, instead of calling you greedy, instead of saying that you're asking for way too much for $50,000 or $60,000 a year. You're getting what you pay for, and you're not attracting the proper quality talent for the most important fucking career and influence on child's lives. So, I don't have any kids, so do what y'all want, but I'd rather have smarter kids than dumber ones. Yeah. Rick, what do you got?
So it's interesting that you bring that up because my sister's actually a teacher down in Iowa.
Thank her for her service.
Yeah, she has been pushing herself a lot to get more and more training. She's currently got her master's and she's considering her PhD, I believe, if I remember correctly from last conversations that I had with my mom. But the crazy thing is that when they discussed these things and going for PhDs and stuff, they end up talking about it like they want to potentially like move into administrative, and it's where that's great for having more teachers in administrative. The thing that I have a hard time with is that now that's still less funding that goes towards the actual teaching, but hopefully having somebody who is well versed in teaching methods in the administrative level can help level that out. But I feel like right now there's a lot of what they, I guess you want to call the old guard, right, who are still in administration, who have been there for 15 years and stuff like that, you know, the same superintendents over and over and over and over. So it's a interesting way to kind of think about it, is that when you talk about schooling and funding, the funding isn't only just school. And when you were bringing up, you know, other countries and stuff like that, you know, their funding levels are different. They have different staff, different things like that. Whereas all the funding goes towards different things here than they would elsewhere. You know, they go towards making district rules and hosting district council meetings and stuff like that. More administration, less teaching. So just interesting.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people who are layered away from students. There are, I think a lot of that might be classroom burnout and looking for advancement in terms of salary, tenure, etc. I think there's also an idea that an interpreter will become a teacher because they want more control to affect things that will positively impact the students. And I think a teacher will potentially begin to underfill and work to try and become an admin so that they can affect more change, more control to help the students do more. But I don't think there's anyone who's going to have enough control in order to do the things that really, really need to be done.
I look at it more personally like we need to treat teaching in the sense that a lot like a improv. You can't just expect certain people to get into this field and be perfect in regards to how they're going to interpret handling class loads, being able to prepare their lesson structures, and being able to reach their students. But then you also have a large amount, and I know that some schools can't provide this as much because we're talking about trying to up the amount of availability in regards to faculty. But a lot of them have their teachers' assistants, their room assistants, people who are in the room who are also trained educators who are behind the main leader of that classroom, and that allows that person to then be introduced to it. Because I know if anybody's ever seen the old documentary called Waiting for Superman, it's talking about charter schools, very pro charter school documentary. And my sister-in-law has a master's in early childhood development, and she was not a big fan of that movie at all because it was trying to frame it in a situation where these charter schools are going to save and fix and better all the bureaucratic problems of the school districts. But that's not what they were doing. They were effectively providing a larger amount of available faculty to these kids, as we talked about earlier.
Better classroom
ratios, and giving them the ability to actually reach the kids on an individual basis and be more impactful to the individual student. And this is, once again, I mean, all these problems we talk about, they come down to a large scale level of funding. It's all funding.
Yep. Now, Mike, we were talking about where the money was going. Now, funding for schools is also a thing here. And in Milwaukee or in Wisconsin, I think we fund property taxes.
Or
is that all across the U.S.?
There's a number of states that have changed how they do their funding for their schools. A number of them, a large proportion of them still use property taxes as like the main way of like maintaining at least a stable level of funding. You have a mixture of the local funding through the property taxes. You have the state aid, and then you also have the federal funding. And we are terrible as a nation towards federal funding because our education department is actively trying to, remove itself from existence.
Yes. The person who was the education secretary under Obama, or under Biden, forgive me, has taught in every level of education and had, I believe, a doctorate in education. This was someone who was saturated in the system and knew it inside and out and how to affect change. Linda McMahon is the current Secretary of Education. She is the wife of the disgusting, raping president of the WWE. Ex-president. Yes, they finally punted him out after decades of knowing all the horrible things he did. She doesn't know jack shit about education. She thought that AI was A1, which is a steak sauce. And Trump campaigned on closing the education department, which is entirely responsible for enforcing civil rights law, particularly those with disabilities. And that's dear and dear to my heart.
The thing too is this: during his first administration, the lady that was in charge of the education department was a huge donor into charter schools in her region. Betsy DeVos. She wanted to.
Yeah, she looked like Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter.
Well, I'm gonna look at it from this perspective. I want you guys to follow along with me if you can. Analogy I like to use in regards to education is that take two clocks, right? Take two clocks and then start them up at the same time. The major difference though is that one clock has a mechanism inside of it that purposely runs it slower than the other clock. And these clocks are going for years and years and years and years and years. And eventually one day something comes along and just takes that mechanism out of the other clock so that it runs at the same speed as that first clock. Do you ever expect them to tell the same time ever again? No, without anyone coming and actually winding that clock to make it catch up. This is in reference to the levels of education that have been funded throughout our country through our multiple periods of time. And I'm specifically talking about the effects of what happened around the time of the Brown versus Board of Education ruling and also the Civil Rights Act of 1964. When we talk about the funding of our education systems, a lot of the funding originally came from property taxes. Certain states have moved away from that system, but Wisconsin's one of the states that still incorporates it. Property taxes are based off of the percentage of value off of the home in regards to what's then paid into the tax system for your local, utilities, education, all these different things. But then once the 1964 ruling was met, there were studies that were done by the University of Minnesota following racial covens. And this basically outlined
racial timeout. We gotta pause for racial covenants. Racial covenants are part of the paperwork of the deed of a house that you would not sell your house to a black family or sometimes a Jewish family. I believe
Asians,
my grandparents had some neighbors who had covenants in their house in a well-moneyed suburb of Milwaukee called Fox Point. But covenants are another form of racial segregation and oppression in the housing market, which leads over to education.
It was a mechanism to legally enforce racial division in regards to property ownership. The thing that I'm emphasizing on this, though, is the study done in the University of Minnesota took all of the records of those racial covens, placed that information into Geographic Information Systems database, and then was able to map the property values of the homes within those environments and found that once that bill had been passed, and we also rights allowed equal purchase of property, and no matter what your racial barrier was, property values for those homes went up exponentially to then price any Black, Hispanic, or Asian buyer out of ever purchasing that property, which means that they were enforcing through financial means a system of, once again, redlining and districting people within segregated zones. If property tax, which is the value of these homes, is what's putting money into the education systems for these regions, that means that people in Black neighborhoods who predominantly were never owners, they were mostly renters, their property values are going to be lower than people who live in affluent, more well-established neighborhoods. So no matter what happened in these situations, let's say the state gives 50% of its state aid across the board evenly. All right, all these schools are getting a base level of funding. But if the property taxes for, say, Whitefish Bay versus Racine are being utilized to provide education to the local public schools, Whitefish Bay, which has been known to have one of the best schools in Wisconsin.
It's also one of the richest, one of the wealthiest
portions.
And River Hills, I think.
Yep. And Brookfield.
We're talking about lakefront property, bluffs as far as the eye can see. I've been inside some of those houses. Wow. Impressive.
And Racine, not so much. Big factory town that had a lot of white flight, so people got out of there, and the city's it's probably one of the highest unemployment rates in all of Wisconsin.
That's a town south
of Milwaukee.
Between Milwaukee and Racine, it's probably 40 minutes south of us.
Oh no, Racine is much closer than Kenosha. So it's
yeah,
like
20 minutes maybe, 20 minutes south. It's where you go to fill up on snacks on your way to Six Flags Great America or to Chicago.
But when we're talking about that property
or
tax,
the Bristol Renaissance Fair,
that's in Pleasant Prairie, which is off of Kenosha, which is right near the border.
No, the Bristol Renaissance Fair is in Bristol, motherfucker. What you talking about? Tell me about the Renaissance Fair.
Tell that to anybody who knows the area right near there.
You know what?
Bristol's on the
Renaissance Fair is here now. I'm poking it. You just
so I have no words in the language of dwarves, elves, or men to describe how cringy this is right now.
Is it bad? Hey,
no.
Then you can cut it and post, motherfucker.
I'm just. I thought you were hitting something.
Probably
But no,
did.
all right. But the property tax problem is a large scale issue, and what I mean by this is that for generations this is impacted. So you're talking about most schools 3 to 4 year rotation. This is 3 to 4 years of poor education, 3 to 4 years of poor education, 3 to 4 years of poor education, and we have this system going on as far back as the eye can see. And then when we talk about systemic racism existing, this is one of the largest perpetrators is our education system being able to limit the availability of good educators, good money, and you have a large discrepancy between school in Racine, which Rich alluded to earlier, that has public funding versus a school that has private funding, which is going to be supported by wealthier donors and wealthier organizers. We then see this system forcing people into basically a lower than normal level of education across the board. And those people now are no longer as well valued in the labor force as people who are in other areas. This problem though, and back to what Luke's point is in regards to charter schools and private schools and religious schools, this problem is just as bad, if not worse, for rural schools. We're talking about schools that have a lot less money to get tossed around.
Less options.
And a lot of the schools, basically for anybody who doesn't know, okay, a basic public school was generally designed to allow a level of education that was going to be uniformed enough that a person could have an education that would allow them to be a workable, usable entity within our society. Anywhere.
Primarily factory work.
Well, primarily factory work, but also now it's starting to once you start integrating more computer work into more white collar jobs, it's trying to provide a well-educated workforce for the area in which it is. If you have an area that has more tech, then those schools are going to focus more on tech. If you have an area that's more rural, they're going to be able to allocate more sources towards teaching those children about agriculture and about things in regards to farm life and general farm work. But that means that education is not going to be equal, and it's more assessed towards the labor value that the graduate would have. So when you talk about the rural environments, my wife comes from a very rural part of Wisconsin, and she would tell me all the time about the difference in attitudes and behaviors of people who went to the public school that she went to versus her sister, who her parents decided to put her in a private school in their area. Kids in that private school would come out with closer to almost like a liberal arts mindset in regards to their education, because the school wasn't made for the farmer. The school was made for the owner. And that person and her sister came out of that school going on to get a master's degree in a field of higher education that's so niche that when she tried to apply for a job, she had to go back to going and living by her parents because there was no market for it. And the weird little side note of that is that she also turned out to be extremely more conservative and way more closely aligned to hard right Christian theologians in regards to how we are as people. My wife went to a public school in the same area and came out with far less of a interest in religion, but it was that private school that led to her now sending her sons there because she thinks the education is better than the public school, which sadly it is. But that's because these people have better funding, they have better utilization of their resources, and they have less people. So they're able to provide
better class
ratio. And we're now talking about multiple cases in the Supreme Court trying to fund these private schools, these religious schools, to now sift those funds away. Charter schools, schools that have, or districts that have school choice, they're all Trojan horses. All of them are Trojan horses, because the idea, as Luke was alluding to earlier, is to find a legal way to shift the public fund, property taxes, and all these other things away from the schools that need these funds and this money, and give them to wealthier people, whether it be in the private sector or the public schools that are then helping to educate the more well-to-do students.
Completely agree. And remember, at the end of the day, you're stealing money from kids. These are children. In these Nordic countries, in these Scandinavian countries, they place less value on individual excellence. My kid needs this. My kid needs a gifted and talented program that's going to give me anxiety for the rest of my life. Instead, it's let's make sure that the poorer children are hooked more and attached more to the richer children, because the rich children are going to be fine. And that's the real way that a rising tide lifts all boats. Rich, did you have a couple of thoughts?
Yeah. So interesting thing that like your conversation right now just had me question is, Mike keeps bringing up the fact of, the religious schools, and we know that for tax purposes, religious spaces and entities get tax breaks. So do those same things apply to these schools? Because if so, then that means that would also play into the funding conversation as to where if they're getting tax breaks in certain areas, they're not having to deal with some of that administrative funding that public schools have to deal with. So just a random thought, just bring it to the table.
That's the big problem that they have right now, is that some of the schools are attached to religious organizations. And so they're trying to get that tax exempt status as a religious entity. And it's one of the big reasons why the Supreme Court has been surprisingly pushing back against the allowance of public funding to go towards the schools. When we talk about funding for education, right? When I talk about it, I'm saying that if we were able to use more of I want to say like maybe an Australian or Scandinavian model, they'd base it more off of a percentage of utilization towards the people who need it the most.
Yes.
What I mean by that is that poorer children require, or people who are in, less educated, more impoverished areas, people who are, the lesser of us all, they require more resources to catch up to the wealthier children in regards to their availability in education.
But they're getting more than I'm getting. That's not fair.
So when you're talking about like how the system's run right now, if the state provided equal funds and then the property taxes leveled it out, a kid who requires double the resources is maybe getting like $500 per student, $400 per student, while the child in a wealthier neighborhood is getting $1,000 per student. And when I'm talking about providing this money, I'm not just talking about providing more teachers. We look at the prison system, okay? The prison system has certainly used to have, it's far less now, especially with private prisons, which I'm totally against them. I don't want to go down the road right now.
That's a whole nother episode.
That's a whole other thing. But these prisons would have trades work or labor training programs that would allow these prisoners to learn a job or learn some kind of skill that they could then transfer into their non-prison life. And this has been study upon study has found that when you give these people in this situation the tools to keep themselves out of doing the wrong thing, they'll take it and they'll never come back. The recidivism rates went down exponentially in these areas. And yet we see more and more schools, especially schools that used to be in the Rust Belt or schools that used to be in blue collar neighborhoods, losing a lot of their after school programs. I mean, you could talk to maybe me and Luke and maybe a little bit Rich
about sports.
I'm talking about having shop classes, having after school programs that would help teach kids stuff, keep them within the school to utilize some more of the school resources. I know that some schools provide post-school daycare kind of setup so that they can have kids who are still there with the teachers and still taking activity with other kids at the school, giving them an environment that is far better than just throwing them out in the street for a couple hours with their friends until their mom and dad come home from work.
Yes. And that's when you get things like the Kia Boys. That's when you get a lot more crime, because bored kids after school by themselves are a terrible combination.
What is it? The idle hands or the devil's playground?
Yes. And the more hormonal and dumber that the hands are, and there are fewer things that are as collectively dumb as a group of teenagers. And I say that with all the love in the world. But if you give these kids, and it's actually interesting, you talk about shop. There was a class that we did that I interpreted for, it was aquaponics. And the kids that are always in the back who couldn't give two shits to rub together, as soon as you get a drill in their hands and they're building an actual system and they're like, okay, we need PVC pipe here and we need to create this kind of thing here, they showed up early. They would skip boring classes to come in and do this sort of stuff.
That's why certain kids like PE more than they like a class where they have to actually pay attention to the board, because you're hitting the part of the brain that gives immediate feedback response. They're seeing a
gratification. You're making something.
You're making something a benefit of their action visibly in front of their face.
Yes. And there are some kids who are just going to slough off in trig class because they know that they're going to be, they want to work in a body shop. They know that they're going to be a mechanic. And so this is all just a waste of time. But if we could get them in and get them an apprenticeship, A, of all, they'll be making money possibly as an intern. Mm-hmm. B, of all, they would have valuable skills in HVAC, in electrician, in plumbing, in what was I just saying? In
like being
construction and mechanics, et cetera, et cetera. Imagine that's where you go and you're more competitive by the time you graduate high school than somebody would be who was maybe aimed for something that was more post-secondary.
And let's not forget that this is a problem, and I'm describing funding in regards to this problem. This is a problem that you as the individual are being convinced is overtaxation. You're being convinced that you're being violated in regards to how much you're being taxed for your property taxes, because for some reason, I know money talks. I know people vote with their wallets, but when you have people going against higher than normal property taxes, I'm paying way too much in property tax. Well, those people want to have their cake and eat it too, because to convince them that property taxes need to go up to improve their schools are the same people who want to put more money into education, but they're convinced that that's only for paying. Well, we need to pay these teachers more money. As Luke said, they don't need the money.
They do need the money. They're not asking for the money.
They need the structure around them to support what they're doing. That's where the money should go. We have kids who are literally in schools across the whole country. The Wisconsin schools thankfully don't have this problem as much as other areas in the South, but we have kids in schools where the simplest solution to improving the school life of these children is two things: giving them food in their bellies and AC on hot days, because they're sitting in a sweltering hot building, unable to concentrate. And if some kids are being, victimized in regards to, us treating them as lessers because they can't get a lunch, and free lunch programs are apparently the bane of the Republican existence.
And the quality of the food is unacceptable as well.
Subpar.
Yes. A lot of these cafeteria workers are motherfucking cooks, and you need to turn them loose as well. Tell Cisco to fuck off for a year and give these people some eggs, give these people some ground beef, and say, go to work and watch what they make you. Man, you'll be missing like pizza, that rectangle fucking pizza that's got the grease on it, that you wrinkle, that you kind of dab a little bit. That grease is where the love is, by the way. These people can do that, but they're just being forced to warm shit up. That's not cool.
I can remember when I had a PE class right after lunch, and we had that pizza, and I'd always be burping. Like,
do you remember there was a Mexican pizza that they had, and it was like octagonal?
Sure.
I'm trying to remember what that was called. It was like the Fiesta something. Damn. But now I want that.
But when we talk about this, the thing is, we're dealing in a situation where every real answer comes down to realistically better distribution of our funding, less funding or more funding for impoverished and lower end schools, and honestly a drop in the funding on higher end schools, which is needed just because those schools are also more likely to get private donation, not to try to get too far into that weed, because that's a whole other problem. But if we allocate more resources to lift up the least of us, as Lucas said numerous times, rising tide lifts all boats. And we're dealing in a situation where these people are convinced by, BS thought, what are they called? The thought police or the ideologues who are
the book banners.
It's like, well, how do you think we should fix the schools? Well, I think personally, we should improve faculty and make it so that these kids have environments where they're able to learn and succeed. How do you think thought leader who wants to lead people down the bad road in regards to how to fix the education system, how do you think we should fix that? Well, the thing you have to understand is that most families or most children who suffer in schools come from single parent households. And so we need to fix the single parent household problem before we can even think of ever making a better education system, because that's where this problem starts in the first place.
And then you start blaming cultures.
Well, blaming people.
Like Ben Shapiro, which is just ridiculous. It can't be the fucking fact that these students have X percent fewer resources than those students. No, it has to be a problem with their culture. How can you explain explain how it's a problem with the culture, first of all, because you don't understand Black culture. So you can get fucked, Mr. Caterpillar Eyebrows.
And the second part is, when you talk to these people about this, they'll say, oh, it's a single parent household. But the problem is that they're basing it off of a statistic of single parents being the ones with kids in the school. That means that they have no information in regards to where the actual father is. And in a lot of these families, the father could still be there. They could still have their father in their lives. It's just not registered in the data that they're being presented. If the mom claims a child as the single parent, even if the dad's in the life, he can't claim it on statistical data. Then that mother is considered a single mother.
Interesting.
Even if the dad's still around. So when people like Ben Shapiro state these statistics, they're basing them off of falsified data. His facts don't care about your feelings.
I had no idea that. That's fucking crazy.
Well, because how would he know if the kid's dad's still there?
Yes. And also, how do you ascribe that to culture?
Yeah.
Explain to me, oh wise one, about Black culture and what it is that's defective in Black culture. It's a cute little punchable way of saying that Black people are more potentially violent or potentially irresponsible when it comes to their parenting, et cetera, which is just complete bullshit.
Or just the changing of our social ideas of what marriage should be for different people. Because you have Latino couples who have children who aren't married. You have Black. I mean, this isn't just an individual cultural thing.
Forget all that. You could get into polyamory now too.
Yeah, well, the amount of people who are married are dropping. The amount of people, and then the divorce rate's going up because they're trying to force couplings together. The amount of people that got into relationships during COVID that ended badly because they were now no longer stuck in their enclosed relationship because of a lockdown. I mean, there's a lot of things societally that led to an increase of child rates, but then a drop in couples. But right now we're seeing the lowest amount for the kids who are coming out of this post-COVID world, the lowest rate of children births we've seen in a long time, because none of them want to have kids. You're providing a world so bad from any metric that the children would rather go childless than be responsible for a life in this world. And when we try to make it better, your response is to blame them. It's your fault for your kids being bad. It's not the world we built around them that drains your resources to fund other kids' educations and make it so that you can't provide the things that are needed for your kid to succeed. That's not what it is. No. Us having a system that benefits other people using your money, that's not the problem. It's you as an adult, you as a parent. And so then if a kid,
you individually have to do more.
You have to do more while your kids suffer. And
meanwhile, you're working 40, 50 hours a week, which is time that you're not spending with the kid. The parent is the primary educator. And I think we could wrap up or come to an initial dissent here with the idea of this. No matter what as a parent, no matter what your situation is, your job is the hardest, but it's the most simple.
Mm-hmm.
Get them bitten by the love of learning. I wasn't curious until after college, but I think a lot of that was because I wouldn't have been curious even by then, if I didn't have parents who forced me to read and forced me to put down, like I was never allowed to have a Nintendo because they knew it would mess up my schooling. Get that technology out of their hands, have them experiment on stuff, build stuff, take stuff apart, play with fucking sticks, and develop the social enrichment that they really need, especially at the high school level. So get them around each other, properly supervised to the best of your ability, but allow them bandwidth for their socialization. And in order to do that, we got to work less. We got to make more. We got to make proper investments in each other instead of profit and growth.
From my personal perspective, just to go a little side note, not too far from what Luke was saying, the difference in regards to being able to maintain your child's sanity in this world, in my personal opinion, because the schools will beat them down, are trying to chisel them into a usable peg for the working role that they're expected to fill. I believe personally, as a parent, your number one job is to help motivate and cultivate your child's creativity. Your child's creativity will help them find those social avenues that will allow them to be able to express who they are as a person. You do limit your electronics time. That's very important. But I find that personally, if you show your children more creative avenues for the usage of that technology, because right now my daughter watches craft stuff all the time. She watches people doing craft things, and then she'll walk right into her art room that we have set up for her, because yes, we have an art room for our daughters. And she will go to town on making something to replicate what she saw from another artist so that she could try to make her own. The
tech supports the art.
You need to cultivate that, because that will be able to develop their critical thinking, because they'll be able to look at a problem differently and they won't be regimented. It'll help find them the spaces. Rich, not to pull him too much into this, his daughter took dance and has enjoyed it immensely, and it has brought out a part of her that he would be more than willing to share with you, but we don't have an extra hour.
Yeah, I mean, the best part of that is just recently her fine arts school that we were able to get her into did a Tennessee competition, and they went down and took first in madrigal, travel, and swing choir against a whole nation of other competitors. So shout out to her, but those are the type of things that we want to see out of our kids, and see them get involved in.
And I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theater Studies from Boston University. So yeah, blow all your money on the arts, guys. It'll be fine. Food, fuck it.
I'm just happy we have an in-house representation of the 1%.
1%. Yeah.
But if we're being honest, back to the analogy before, you look at,
no, I'm not.
You look at the winding of that clock every day. Kids who go to the more well-to-do schools, nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. We need a restructuring of how our education system is being maintained. We do not need intervention. We don't need large-scale financial intervention, as Bill Gates found out. We need to instead refocus on what is needed. Listen to the teachers. Listen to what the people who are our subject matter experts in regards to raising our future generations have to say. And we can then take that mechanism out for all these children that grew up in these schools that were constantly under the gun, constantly having to play catch up and having to find new inventive ways to fund themselves. And eventually at some point we can hope to get to a point back to where after school programs are the norm instead of the exception. And we then have that clock finally catch up. Otherwise, we're just going to keep saying the same problems, and we're going to keep pointing fingers at the same problems and never see any changes towards a better or brighter future. And this is just us playing, cracking the edge, the shell, because that onion goes way deeper. Because we could go down into the psychology of the classroom, go into the treatment of placement of children in rooms. There's all kinds of crazy stuff that goes into maximizing education levels. But this is just talking about what is affecting us now, what is affecting your children actively, and what's happening across the board to destroy what we have and leave a lot of people in the dust. And a lot of people are going to suffer. Don't fall. Please don't fall for the BS voucher systems. Please don't fall for these fundings of our public, or I should say our private and our religious organizations. They don't need it. They already got the money. They just want more money. They want us, the lower end of the tax burden, to fund their higher end venture. And we've already been doing that for other things. We don't need to keep doing that for education.
Yep. Fuck them. Tax the rich.
Yeah. We need to hold their feet to the fire if they want to go off on their own, because we're not going to support them when they start to fail. And guess what? After the large first initial scale boom of charter schools, a lot of them started closing their doors.
Fly by nights too. Yeah. They stole a lot of money and then fucked off.
The most popular and most famous one I can think of is Trump University. You know, that succeeded, right?
Yep.
No.
Well, it succeeded in him getting a bunch of money.
I heard RFK got his degree in mathematics from there. Because there, you can get a 600% decrease in the cost of your medication, right?
I thought he studied voice there.
Yeah. Well, no, the whole 600% decrease in cost of medicine.
That means
you're paying you money.
Yes, just it's like so dumb.
They're morons. But
don't cut the Department of Education if you think you can cut something by 600%. You dumb.
Yeah. That's just the most dumb and most idiotic thing I've ever heard. That makes sense, right, Mr. President? Yes, it does. It makes the most sense.
Yep. Another thing you could do is be more selective with your curriculum, with your curricula. A lot of superintendents are very interested in picking things and implementing a new thing that needs to be successful this year or next year to prove that I'm doing the right thing. And that's part of the infection of politics into the education system. They should be an entity unto themselves and regulated by and answerable to themselves, so that we're not trying to pollute them with political bullshittery.
Some random parent who's now head of the PTA or the school board is now telling the teachers what the best thing to do to teach their kids.
Bad enough that they have their teachers' emails, and so they're able to email teachers directly and pester them.
We want our professionals to be able to be professionals, to work their jobs in a professional field and be able to succeed professionally. And for some reason, we've allowed ourselves to put ourselves in a position where we're not letting that happen. And it's causing a lot of undue grief. And we're watching an epidemic across the United States of idiots nonstop, just coming out of the woodwork, saying the most ridiculous things in the world, but feeling as though they're somehow justified in being that stupid. And I don't know if, speaking for Rich, speaking for Luke, we hope that you guys can understand that this is a large scale problem. And we are hoping that you guys can utilize what we've provided in regards to this, very basic level information and start making some more better educated decisions. And on part of us from L.U.M Podcast, we're pulling for you. And we're all in this together, right? He said, officer, get off, mister. No.
Fuck Big Boy. I'm sorry. I'm mad at Big Boy right now.
Yeah.
Really, really mad. You voted for Trump. You supported Trump.
Dave Chappelle made it clear why.
What, money?
It's all about the money.
Yes.
He was going to
most likely.
He's in the tax bracket that would benefit from the breaks the most.
Yes.
So, fuck it. Why not?
And it's just such a, you represent the A. You're all about Atlanta and you're all about, God, man. And my favorite fucking hip hop group ever. The Love Below.
They're my number one.
Unbelievable. And now all I got is that goddamn fucking flute album. I'm taking a